Hello, and welcome to the OR Manager Conference Encore virtual event. I'm Torcilla Mora, Senior Editor of OR Manager, and I'm pleased to welcome you here for our live discussion with the award winners from the 2021 OR Manager Conference. Throughout today's session, we encourage you guys to submit your questions in the Q&A chat screen section on your screen. The session will be interactive, and our panel would love to hear from you. We will address audience questions throughout the discussion, so please be sure to start adding your questions. It is now my pleasure to get started with the winner circle session. All right, let's introduce the panelists participating today. We have Mary Ann Douglas, the Executive Director, Surgical Operations at Intermountain Healthcare. She's the award recipient of the 2021 OR Manager of the Year. Pedro Nobles is the Clinical Director, Cardiovascular Operating Room at Inova Fairfax Medical Campus. She is the award winner of the 2021 Emerging Leader of the Year. Janet Quigley is the Nursing Director, Post-Anesthesia Care at Massachusetts General Hospital. She is the award recipient of the 2021 PACU Manager of the Year. Beverly Kirchner is the Compliance Officer of Surgery Direct. She's the award recipient of the 2021 Pioneer Leader of the Year. Welcome, ladies. How's everybody doing?
Great.
Well,
Doing well today.
Cool. Let's get started with the discussion. All right, first question. How do you guys define success in your career and personal life? Go ahead.
well, I can start that. I'll start it for us. Success for me is defined by the team and how well the team feels that we have achieved any of the processes that we're looking at, and of course, it also seals around patient care. So success to me is really measured by the team. And in my personal life, success to me is measured by the time I get to spend with my family and watching them succeed and finish school and go through life. And we have just sent our fourth generation nurse into nursing school this year. So it's been a really great year for us. So that's what success is.
That's awesome.
And I can, I have to say, I agree. The years I've been a manager, as a leader, I define success as my team, and I spend a lot of time building a team, try to empower the staff, lead by example, all the things that any kind of leadership book tells you. But I think it's real important that the unit runs itself the way I run it when I'm here. The staff feel good about their job. They sign up to make changes. They're very involved, and they're very proud of their work and their the care they give the patients. So I define it by just kind of taking a temperature of my staff, the patients, the families, and the feedback that I get about how well the staff do. So it's all about the staff. It's my favorite part of my job, and the patients. And personal life, it's being happy. It's family. It's feeling good. It's being able to go for a run, take some and downtime, and for a sail. I mean, things like that. Healthy, balanced lifestyle.
I like the phrase "taking the temperature." I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I might just add, I agree both with Janet and with Bev. I also think that seeing a team thrive, we've been through some terrible times, but part of the success I see is we have thrived together. We've banded together. We've supported one another. And you can just survive and get by and say, well, we made it through that challenge. But I think a successful challenge to overcome it is how you thrive together. And that's by supporting, and it's the team. And I agree with family. I think that is probably the most important downtime part of my life. My youngest just graduated as a nurse. She's been in the pandemic giving care, and I'm very proud of her and all of my children that are in healthcare.
Yeah, and as a still relatively new leader, one of the other keys to success for me and my team is the recruitment of those new nurses into the operating room. I think, we all probably experience that the operating room isn't a focus of most nursing programs. So when I have those opportunities to share what the operating room is all about and give people that opportunity, I define success of getting those new nurses into the operating room.
Great. And what are the biggest challenges you faced in your career, and how did you overcome them?
I can start if you'd like.
Please go.
I think being a PACU manager, the COVID, the COVID surge, and especially the first peak. We did have two peaks in Boston, and the first peak, none of us knew what we were dealing with, and everyone on this call knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the biggest problem for me was we did put all the ORs, the elective cases, on hold. So out of 60 operating rooms, we were running 15, which were the urgent emergents, and
Wow.
still had to care for those patients. But all the other staff had to change their schedules overnight and become ICU nurses. So we opened up 48 COVID surge ICU beds, took on 147 travelers because I don't have 24/7 staff, so I had to subsidize them supplement them, with travelers, and nurses from the ambulatory surgical areas who hadn't done this in a million years. So I had at one point 600 different nurses to staff that 48 bed surge unit, and most of them I didn't even know who they were. But it was just helping the staff get through that and preparing for it yet again, the next surge, when everyone was still traumatized from the first one. And then so the past couple of years have definitely been the most challenging. Although I've had a million challenges, I could talk forever. So
Janet, you're probably right. All of us can share that story of we've had multiple challenges, but just, what the past 2 years have done. And just when you think you got a grasp on that first wave, nope, something else changed and you were thrown that curveball.
yeah.
And it's just that ability to redirect and overcome and do it in a moment's notice. Those are some of the challenges, and the way that I have been able to overcome them is flexibility.
Yeah, I think on that note, definitely COVID has been a tough challenge, the pandemic. We've had 4 waves out in the West, very similar things where people have changed their work overnight. In fact, I saw a pediatric anesthesiologist. Our PEDS unit right now is having both COVID and RSV. They have a double whammy. And one of our pediatric anesthesiologists was just finishing an overnight shift in the ICU, dusting off his intensivist skills. But he was so positive and he was upbeat. And he said, I haven't done this in 12 years, but it's kind of been fun, and that word fun during COVID, it's not something that you normally hear. We had another hospital, instead of shutting down every day at 1 p.m. and at 8 p.m., they would not schedule cases in the OR during that time, and all their OR staff would go over to the ICU and do all the proning and all the vital signs and bed baths. And the ICU, that's all they needed was a few hours a day. And they called them angels in green. And they took pictures of them coming through the hallways in their green scrubs. To me, this has been challenging. But what I find the most challenging, and it was probably 15 years ago, I had to really work on a unit that was inflexible. And I don't think the challenges that unit was facing were harder than COVID, but they felt harder because there was such an inflexible attitude. In fact, I did an OR manager presentation years ago on that. It was how to turn around a troubled unit. It's if people won't come along with the change, to me, that is the biggest challenge. that I've faced in my years. And overcoming that, sometimes you have to move people on, which is my least favorite thing to do. But we can get through anything with flexible attitudes. And I feel like that's what we've seen during our pandemic. And it's almost been encouraging to me. I've just been uplifted to watch it. I don't want to repeat it.
No.
Don't want to do this again. Ready to move on. But I
Well, if it
find
does happen
flexibility-
again, we're more prepared, right?
Correct.
And for us, it was keeping our staff's morale up and keeping them looking at the wins that they were having instead of the losses that they were having. Now, we're ambulatory, but we still, when we had staff, we staffed over at our hospital across the street from us. And we did a lot of things that we'd never done in a long time. And the team was really great, but keeping the morale up and letting them know that they were really winning in the battle, not losing, and giving them moral support was probably the biggest challenge and the most rewarding part of what's gone on in the last 2 years.
Great. Flexibility is the name of the game, it sounds like. What is something you learned early on in your career in the award that still holds true? Everybody left. Petra, do you want to start?
Sure. So one of the things that I learned early in my career, I was still a relatively baby OR nurse and worked for a leader who was not supportive, not encouraging, didn't really invest in her team. And that wasn't, it didn't provide me, what I needed as a new nurse to continue to grow and continue to develop. And ultimately, that's probably what led me down the leadership track that I went down, is knowing what kind of leader I didn't want to be. That still holds true of, investing in my team and in my people is kind of what's important. The other stuff that we as leaders have to do in budgets and finance and on and on and on. But if you don't invest in your people and you don't invest in your team, the rest of it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I'll go next. There are a lot of things that come to my mind. But as a young nurse doing neurosurgery with 2 neurosurgeons, we had a very set routine. My job was to make sure that our x-rays were there and that I correctly put the next patient's x-ray up as the neurosurgeons, and they worked together. They assisted each other. As they came in the room, the primary surgeon would check that patient's name. We almost had a sign-in process and a timeout process long before it was vogue. And we were really careful with checking the level and having an x-ray taken. And the 2 would check independently which level we were at on the x-ray and make sure it's correct. What I learned from that and what we've tried to mimic in our safety processes is it takes a team. And you've got to have a support process. It can't be on the shoulders of one person. We often talk about 400% accountability in our ORs. The nurse, the surgeon, the scrub tech, and the anesthesiologist. And we want them as a group to verify our safety processes. And when I look back at how we just did that organically, our little group in that little room, and we made it the same every time, it's the safety processes, high reliability. And I didn't know that's what it was. And it's true today.
I think I'm going to answer it a little bit differently. Maybe something that hopefully, some of it holds true, but I think as a new leader, just generically, I put hours and hours and hours into this job, and I worked around everybody's schedule and I could be here 14, 15, 16 hours. And I think the one thing about that is you have to put extra hours when you're a new leader. Everyone knows that. And depending on what's going on, you need to flex up, but you do need to take care of yourself as well. And you do need to set some guidelines. And give it your all, but get out too and get away. And the other thing that I didn't do as much as a new leader, but I've learned and I do it all the time, is including the staff. So when I'm making change, get the buy-in, let them feel like they own it, delegate more. It makes them feel good, and it also helps my job. And I think the more you can include the staff with what's going on, trust them, let them know what my pressures are in the hospital, where what I need them for. The more I share with them, the more intelligent their decisions are, and the more they feel better about themselves, and I am just a contributor and not doing all the work. So
And for me, it was transparency. I learned very early that you had to be transparent and communicate. And that when you're transparent and communicating, no matter what hits you, you plan for your day. All of us plan every day for what the day we hope looks like. But with that transparency, it allows flexibility to really occur on the run when something goes wrong, or when something gets added that you weren't expecting, or even somebody calls in that you desperately needed for that day. And so I think that was the lesson I learned very early, is communicating and being transparent. And when you are, the team flexes very fast with you, and the outcomes are much better than when you keep everything to your chest.
Awesome. The new word expression I learned now is the 400% accountability. Was that what you said, Marianne?
Yeah, that's correct.
I like that. All right. On the flip side, what is something you guys learned that's completely different today? Bev, you chuckled. Go ahead.
Thank goodness, the way we interact with physicians. I will go out and say that. I also am glad that we don't clean out glass jars, glass IV, that we don't wash metal pans and redo them, although we do have some metal. And maybe we need to go back to metal and glass, right, as we look at our environment. But not the way we did it way back then. I think, and I have a daughter who's an OR nurse, and I talk to her frequently about the way that our interactions have changed and the expectation of respect that we discuss openly and that is now part of our environment that wasn't always there. We have a ways to go as I speak to her about some of her interactions, and she'll call me at night and this happened and how do I handle that? We still have a ways to go, but I also like to acknowledge that we have a completely different interaction between our colleagues than we did 40 years ago. That tells you my age now.
That was a trick question to get at your age.
Yes, it was.
No, I think for me, the easy thing to say is documentation. I learned how to document on flow sheets, and I was very proud of how I filled out every little block on those flow sheets, and now it's all electronic. But we all know that. But one thing I do think about is the relationships, and it's going from incident reports, reporting incidents, to now we have safety reports, and it's a safety culture. And the more transparent we are about near misses, and handling behavioral situations, making sure everyone that we take care of an issue right away between a physician and nurse, and sit down and kind of clear the air and move on. Mutual respect for people at all levels. So I really like what we've done with safety over the years.
That's great.
So I'm going to build on what everybody said so far. I know that this team probably doesn't remember and doesn't realize, but it was me and Jeannie Zalanko and Richard Gilder back in 2004, 2005. We sent out the first survey on civility and respect in the operating room based on things that were going on. And since that time, because when we were doing this research, IORM was very generous with us. When we were doing this research, we found nothing in the literature except in England and Australia on the topic. And now today, we can't pick up a journal our internet without something being discussed about civility in nursing. So that was something I had to learn, and it was something that was so passionate with me that we got to share, and it thrills me every day to see that happening. And I hope that that piece of courage it took to step up at that time to call this out was important, and it has moved nursing a lot further. And I think you just heard that from our two previous leaders about how respect is better now today and what is different than what it was back. And I'm with you on the 40 years plus, so we're good there. But yeah, I'm with you, and I think that is something we've all had to learn, and I think it's something we're still learning every day. And another piece of that to me was, as I worked in teaching hospitals early on, and I know several people here on this call do too, and it was the way the professors were teaching our residents and the disrespect between them at times that I think drove what is happening. And I'm really glad to say that the American College of Surgeons and others are really looking at how they teach today too. And I think that's huge, the way we're teaching versus the way it used to be taught. So that to me is one of the biggest things in my career that has occurred. And I really, really appreciate the way the country has moved forward with it. So.
And, just technology. And the reason that we are able to talk about the incivility and the respect and the culture changes that we are all going through is because of technology. Maybe not 40 years, but I still remember writing out and pen and paper documentation. And our stories were very siloed, and they're not siloed anymore. And it is out there, and technology has allowed us to do that. And I think technology will only continue to promote all of the great changes that we're making, and keep moving us forward.
I was going to say the access to information nowadays is just so much more, right? So it's kind of hard to hide these things now.
Yes.
What is the most common mistake young managers make? Or, if you guys want to talk about established leaders, we can do that too, one or the other.
So I think, Janet, I think may have hit the nail on the head. And it's just thinking that you can conquer the world in the first 90 days. Mm-hmm. And putting so much on your plate that you can't get things accomplished. So it is something that every new leader does. And sometimes you have to do it more than once to remind yourself that you can't change everything overnight. But just break it off in those small pieces, manageable pieces, engage your team, manage your time, and create that balance.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think one of the things I probably didn't take enough time, which I would encourage everyone to do, is relationship building. I feel like, especially with the physician group or the administrative group, I was so busy all the time, just busy. And I don't think I really got to know, built some strong relationships with individuals. And as you move through your initiatives, it's so important. You find out later, it's just so important that you have these relationships and you work with people as a group to get things done. And that's one of the things I would probably wish I did a little bit better when I was new. Part of it is like freeing yourself up when you're that busy and making sure you're at the table when the decisions are being made, or when the people that are important and to your success are there. So it's kind of a two-prong approach, I think.
And I'd like to build on that too, because I'm in a little bit different environment being in ambulatory. And the first ambulatory surgery center, and I'm really dating myself now, is 1985. And we combined our lounges. The doctors had their lounge with the nurses. And I think that building that relationship at that point in time and learning about relationships and understanding that, especially when we were working with physician owners, that they had to be a part of the decision-making team, but you have to encourage them to do that because they always feel they're too busy. They'd much rather complain about a change than help implement a change or design and implement a change. And I think those are lessons that I learned very early, that you've got to include that physician in any change that you make, and you've got to have a champion or two to help you be successful in it. And that still goes true today, even with the established leaders that I work with. It's the relationship building, and I think this team has hit it right on the head.
I've got a couple of thoughts on this one, and I see about 128 different managers in my role as the organizational leader over surgical operations. And I see a couple of rookie mistakes. I think that Petrell and Janet were right on, you've got to know what your staff want, and you've got to include them. Sometimes managers spend too much time on the administrative side and they're not listening to the team. So that's one way where they balance the wrong way. But then others really pay attention to the team. They round. They're almost like a charge nurse in their everyday, too involved in the day-to-day activities and not paying attention to the administrative side. You've got to find a balance, but you cannot neglect the leader, the C-suite, and you cannot neglect your staff. So that's one area that I see new managers struggle with. I used to tell my new managers, for things like budget or evaluations, schedule time out of the office, whether you stay home and do it. When I was a young manager and a young mother, I didn't do those tasks at home, but I'd go into the library on the first floor in the hospital and hide in a cubicle way in the back and write my evaluations because I couldn't get them done in my office. So you got to be smart about how you use that time. The other rookie mistake I see young managers make is when they're rolling something out, they use the term "they made us" or "they told us." When you become a victim manager, you give away your power. You're not the leader. You now are a messenger. You're not a leader. You have got to own the message. You've got to figure out how to develop those initiatives. If you disagree with them or there's a part of them you're really concerned about, it's your job to speak up to the leaders that be and change those things where you can. But if not, it's a we. We are doing this and the why. And when you roll out initiatives and take the power and own that, you begin to see how you can coalesce your teams. But if you become a they, it becomes us and them, and you now put yourself in an impossible position. So those are some of the things that I pass on to new leaders in my organization.
That is awesome. Victim manager, another term. I love it. Who has made an impact on your life? Or if not a person, what inspires you?
I'll start this one. My husband. My husband has been my wind beneath my wings. He has supported me in everything I've done, not only in my nursing career, but also in my volunteer nursing career. And how many men in our lives and husbands in our lives have helped us as in our careers. And I can't tell you how appreciative I am of how he supports and lifts us up and covers for me when I can't be at home because I'm doing something that I feel is valuable, not in my career, but for the nursing in general. Nursing itself is in trouble, and I'm out there fighting for nurses and nursing every day. And I know that every leader on this call is doing the same thing. We're out there fighting, and we can't do it without that support system back home. So my hero in my life that's made the biggest impact is my husband supporting me.
It's really nice.
I think without, obviously good friends and family, parents, everyone. I love, so many people have made an impact. But I'm thinking of what inspires me. And it's leading a great group, and it's making decisions um, to improve the patient care and improve the workplace for the staff, and no matter how hard it is. And sometimes it is very difficult because you have to send messages to people that don't want to hear certain things, but I know I'm here for a reason. I'm here to support my staff, take care of my staff, take care of my patients and families. And when there's a issue and with that, and I'm unable to do it, for instance, like in the PACU, sometimes you're just full with patients. You have patients that can't get out to the floors because of capacity. And then you have patients sitting in the operating room that can't get into the PACU. So it's like, it's everything log jammed. I work hard so that doesn't happen. I don't want to see that happen to one patient. And when it does, I'm like a dog with a bone. I want to fix this for the short term and the long term. And the staff don't like it either. So I think it's what inspires me is just making sure I'm doing everything I can in the PACU to assure these patients get great care and get into the recovery in an efficient way. So
I'll say I've had multiple people along the way that have impacted my life, both personal and professional, to get me to where I am today. And, I think I am still most inspired by being a nurse and sharing my knowledge with anyone that wants to listen. I had the privilege of doing an interview with a graduating nursing student, looking to enter into one of our perioperative fellowships. And, he struck me in saying, I want to know the why behind what I'm doing. And it inspires me that is still there, and that drive for excellence is still there. So, those are the people that I just want to pour into and continue to grow the profession.
And I would say here, Bev, to husbands, whether they've made macaroni and cheese late at night when we're not home, or driven our purse to us at work because we left in a crazy fit and forgot it. I can't name the ways that I've got a great husband that supported me. I think personally, I think about a grandmother who was a hard worker and taught me hard work. If you want to go into management, you will work hard, and you need to be ready for that. But I think in the leadership realm, there's a couple of people that have impacted and inspired me. I had a CEO in our children's hospital, and he was just a phenomenal leader. His communication style was so effortless. He was so honest and open. I learned from him so many ways, and he's gone on to teach in some of the CEOs in some of our MBA programs and MHA programs across the West. When he retired, I took his poster and put it in my office. People put their heroes in their office, and his name was Joe Horton, and Joe was my hero, and that poster was in my office for many years. And then I'd be remiss, you've got to have colleagues that support you. I have a close colleague. She's now our operations officer, but we've worked together for almost 38 years and had each other's backs. So often women don't support one another, and they climb on top of each other. And I have, instead of trying to go and one-up each other, this colleague has been there and been happy for my successes. And you need that as well. You've got to have friends that you can go to in those moments of frustration and vent, or do the things you want to do but you don't do in front of others. You got to have somebody who's going to be there for you. And my good friend Dusty Clegg, my operations officer, has been that for me. So there are quite a few that have helped me.
Great. I think we touched on this next question a little bit with you, Marianne, when you said sort of like capitalizing on the space to get things done. But any other tips for how to find balance juggling daily demands and prioritizing things?
Yeah, that is probably the hardest thing we all face. I don't care what job you're in, trying to get it all done in a day is just impossible. It's learning how to prioritize. There are days you need to leave the balance sheet, the budget on the desk and go round. If it's been a particularly difficult day for the team, I can remember when we had some horrific traumas, and I just knew where I needed to be was at the bedside. I needed the scrubs on. I might just be checking in with teams. How are you doing? Surgeons, are you all right? What can I do for you? It wasn't big gestures, it was small things, but knowing to get out of the office and go be there in those times was important, but also knowing when to schedule that time out of your office and get that homework done. There's homework you have to do in a management job, and you can maximize your time if you do it in a place where you're not interrupted. That's kind of what I have discovered.
Yeah, I think the same thing. Prioritization is something that you have to spend a lot of time doing and changing in a hospital environment. It's not your priorities one day are not your priorities sometimes the next day. And another thing I'd recommend is set realistic deadlines, because so many people in the hospital want you to do it and have it done the next day or 2 days. When it's not realistic, it's not going to be done right and it's not sustainable. So I think just setting some realistic deadlines for yourself, doing it right from the beginning, and then leaving early if you have to one day and giving yourself permission, working at home to try to get caught up and just kind of think again. Sometimes when you're so busy, you're just so clouded, you're not even thinking straight. Sometimes just getting away from it all, you actually can think again and reprioritize. So, and the other thing I think what Marianne said is I sometimes just say, no, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to go make rounds and talk about their families and talk to the staff about their patients. And that's so fun for me. I just love my job again when I do that. So I kind of do that for myself as well. And they like it, I think.
Yeah, they
It's cool,
do.
like finding a way to love your job again. I like that.
Prioritizing is definitely something that changes constantly. And I kind of have a mantra of these are the things I must do today. These are the things I should do today. These are the things I could do today. And, whatever is on that to-do list, what I come into in the morning, it may change in the next 30 minutes. And, it is exactly wherever that focus needs to be. You may come in with a grand plan of, reviewing, volumes and utilization or whatever, it is that we're reviewing, but then your team needs you. So that goes by the wayside and you focus where your focus needs to be.
For me, juggling the daily demands is, of course, a list, but it's also driven by my team, not just the nurses, but at the business office. I have huge responsibility in revenue cycle management and an ASD. So it's not just budgeting for us, it's everything from capital equipment purchases down. But one of the things I do to keep myself balanced with the daily demands is about once every other week, I try to go out and work with that team all day, put on my scrubs, listen to them, watch them, observe what they're doing, and then listening to the questions they're asking each other and coming back and then resetting my priorities, because I try to do that every 2 weeks. And if I do that, I think it keeps me fresh, it keeps me motivated, it keeps me learning, but it also gives me the opportunity not only to balance, but to give back to the team what they see as a priority, and remove the barriers that they are facing. And again, the last thing I think that all of us on this call do, and we just don't realize it, we provide our team the resources to do their job safely and to provide quality care. And that's where demanding daily demands come in. It's providing resources, and that's huge at the top of my list.
One other thought came to me when Bev was speaking. I did an annual calendar. When I was a manager and a director, I knew our capital budget was due in April, but I would start in the December and January and say to surgeons, hey, what kind of things? We did our operational budget in July. So I would make sure in May that I was starting to look at where are all our staff budgeted? Do they have their right hours? So I worked on that process of an annual calendar for those big chunks that I knew I need to get started early.
Sorry about the feedback, guys. But yeah, I like that. So the planning, so every 2 weeks, or even going macro and sort of looking at the year. Got it. How do you guys stay energized and productive in your work? Janet, you sort of touched on that with trying to like find things that are fun about your job.
Yeah, I can't. I love that. I mean, and I was listening to what Bev and Marianne said too. It just walking around, talking with people, talking with patients, talking with families, just allowing yourself that time. And Bev touched on this, is sometimes you realize your priorities are not the same as the staff priorities. If you're out of touch for about a week and you're so busy in your office, and then you're out there walking around, I say out there because it's right here, out there walking around, and you hear that, wait a minute, this is what people are really concerned about. And it just keeps you in touch with people, keeps them much more motivated. They love to talk about their work and their families, and know that you're listening to them. And I actually enjoy it because it helps me. Just that's what we all love to do as nurses. And I don't think, I think that's what makes us feel good. That's why we loved being clinical nurses. We loved the care we gave, the difference we made in our patients and families. And it's just nice to see this on a bigger level, that my staff are now providing it, but I'm leading them through it. So it's just what we're all here to do. Got through the COVID crisis, we get through the capacity crisis, and one crisis after another, and people laugh and they have a good time. So I love that part of it.
I stay energized, and I have to confess, these last 2 years have kind of brought down my energy level, but my energy comes from being out and building relationships in organizations like OR Manager and other nursing organizations that affect my daily care and the care that my team is giving. And I think that for me, being out there and listening to presentations that my colleagues are giving based on experiences they've had, what worked, what didn't work. I also believe in lifelong learning, and I think that connecting with your peers is a big part of lifelong learning. And to me, that's what energizes me to get up every morning, is what am I going to learn today, and what am I going to hit as a barrier, and what if I hit that barrier, do I have a resource myself to go to help me go around, over, or through that barrier, so that we can be successful in patient care, patient safety, and building teams that are resilient and stay with us and provide what our communities need in healthcare.
Yeah, I will say, going to OR Manager Conference almost a month ago now, it really refilled my cup. I think at a time when, everybody in healthcare and healthcare leaders were starting to run on empty, that networking and that connection and that listening to the amazing speakers and the topics that they were talking about really did refill my cup, had me come back energized and ready to, refill the cups of my team members as well.
Yeah, that is very true. And it wasn't going to be my answer, but listening to Bev and listening to Petrell talk about national organizations and going to meetings, it is true. Over the years, that's where I've gotten so many of my ideas. I've credited OR Manager with raising me as a young budgeter. I went to the business manager conference, and that's where I learned a lot of basic budgeting skills, because there is nobody holding your hand and teaching you that generally back at home. So that is good. I think on a local level, energizing and productivity with our teams, we've got to find ways to play, whether it's fun activities at work, whether it's, something for it's OR Nurses Week this week. I mean, I've
Yeah.
gone around the system and saw just some delightful, games, things that they were doing. I remember our group played shuffleboard with human shuffleboard in chairs. They were pushing each other down the hall to see how close they could make it to a mark. And people were laughing. Doctors were getting involved, and they were, shoving the doctor down the chair and joking about, oops, hit that wall kind of hard, sorry. But just those kind of activities where we play together. We got a group together last Friday, have not done this before ever, but we played laser tag. And we invited our IT team, and we invited our compliance members, and we had a ball. And it was the idea of our senior medical director. And it was just the team. I have gotten more emails about that. Was so fun. We need to do that more. It was 2 hours. We worked the day. We had a lot in the afternoon. We still did, but we found time to play. And I think we miss that in our roles in hospitals and in nursing too much. We need to find ways to play.
And that idea came from leadership above you. Is that what you said?
Yeah, it was my colleague. So there's 4 of us in our team, and the senior medical director just said we should take our team and go have laser tag. And
awesome.
I'm not a big laser tag fan. I was like, really? You want to do that? But I took
It
the
is fun.
pictures. I went around and watched the teams. It was hilarious. And it
Yes.
was the best thing I've seen in a long time. So play.
Awesome. That kind of answers the next question, I think, but just in case we have anything different to say, how do you guys prevent personal burnout or within your team as well? Outside of play.
I don't know. I think it's probably a lot of the things we've already said is take time to play and think and just think about what really matters. Not all the politics, not the way someone treated you, like all this. What really matters and why we're here, and knowing and walking through your units and seeing people get amazing care, just bringing it back down to that level helps prevent burnout. And then personally, it's like just staying in touch with my family and friends, going out for drinks and having people to talk to that you trust, and just sharing stories. I mean, because then the more you do that, you realize it's not really you. And this happens to a lot of people. It's tough. And take your vacations when you need them, or anytime you can take vacations. But I think just to give OR manager a plug too, because I didn't say it in my last answer. I've been coming to OR manager since I think it was 1993. I can't remember. And the first job in OR manager I had to monitor the temperature and the lighting in the room. And I was sweating. I was so nervous I was going to do it wrong. So, but it's one thing I realized is I'm never alone. I sometimes can drown in my job and think I'm the only PACU that goes on hold. I'm the only PACU that, this. But then when you go to OR manager and you network, it's amazing. You just sit there and go, oh, thank God everybody has the same problems as I do, and not in a bad way, and then share the strategies. And you could reach out to each other and talk during the year and figure things out. How have you worked with this? So I think it's so important for new managers and older managers just to have that network. And this is a perfect platform really for us.
Yeah, I'd say 2 things for personal burnout. And we learned this in the pandemic as a country, and that's connection with others.
Yeah.
Without that connection, people are burning out. We're burning out and are burning out in huge numbers. We need that as human beings. Just recently, my husband and I invited a young couple over that live in our neighborhood. Didn't know them well. My kids are out of the house. Some of them were out of the state. And we said, let's invite them over. They sat on one end of our long table. We tried to social distance. But it was such a great experience. I haven't done this in a couple of years. I fixed a nice dinner. I love to cook. I like to entertain. Small, just in a small group. And it was really fun. And all four of us said, we need to do more of this. The other thing is get out in nature. I do a lot of hiking, just to walk around the block. I think getting out of your office during the day and go outside for 10 minutes and breathe the air. Those are a couple of my thoughts on personal burnout.
Mhm.
I'll mimic what Marianne said, that human connection.
So important.
So incredibly important. And similar thing is, I recently had a small group of people, and it was just that human connection. We weren't talking about work. We were talking about other things that we enjoy to do and how much we've missed it and missed being with people, over the past 2 years. And, I re-energized that with my team because I think we're all at a point. Yes, burnout is real. And just remembering that is a human being on the table and reestablishing that human connection. And we're not just robots doing a job, but we are human beings. We need that human connection, both personally and professionally.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about team burnout. One of the things that we have been doing as a leadership team in the company I work with is we are looking at what the passion is of each of the team members, and we're trying to give them the opportunity to live that passion so that, yes, they're doing things they don't enjoy every day and is causing burnout, but we try to give them something that gives them that reward and helps them in their job, as well as gives them that opportunity to share with the other team members what their passion is and to make changes. And when we talked about change earlier, your team is the best place to go to find out what that change should be and needs to be. And so let them live their passion, and that will decrease the burnout in the team.
Okay, awesome. We have a little bit over 5 minutes. I'm going to skip to our last question. What is next in your career? Where do you guys hope to go from here? Do you want to start, Jenny?
With me?
Yeah. You laughed.
I thought you'd start with the younger one who was. I think I'm at the end of my career. I would like next to retire maybe within the next 2 to 5 years. I'm not really sure exactly, but I don't want to totally retire. I'd actually like to do consulting, and I'd like to do consulting with everything I've learned, and at different hospitals, but probably Mass General Hospital where I work, there's always new initiatives. I like the project management. I like involving teams to solve issues. And I know we don't have a lot of time to do that in our present jobs. And it's really, really helpful to have someone who understands your institution, the perioperative arena, and how to make things happen so they're sustainable. And that's what I really enjoy. So that's what I'd like to do. Don't tell anyone.
Well, Janet, to build on you, I've been a nurse entrepreneur since 1999, owning my own company. Of course, right now I had sold the majority of my company, so I do have partners. But I think for me, the next step in my career is to just slow it down some and do what I want to do and be the support behind the team instead of a part. Well, you're still a part of the team, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that I'm not that day-to-day operational person they turn to. I'm that resource that they turn to when they need somebody to go in depth with them or to just hear what they have to say. So for me, over the next few years, I'll be transitioning from daily, really on the workforce, moving back to becoming that resource, because I'm not ready to retire. I found that my friends that have retired, within 3 months, they stayed very busy, but they were looking how to reconnect with nursing and their friends. And so I want to learn from their lessons and just pull back some and enjoy life a little bit more personally, on a personal level, but also stay connected, sharing and learning, and sharing knowledge. Knowledge is the biggest piece. And as we baby boomer nurses are retiring, and we've retired and grows, we're taking a knowledge base with us that our young leaders don't have, and we need to stay active to be able to be that foundation to help them build their careers and to be successful.
Yeah, since I'll take the next one, and then we'll have our young one give her career. She's got a little more. She's gonna have to talk longer because she's got longer. I'm like Janet, close to retirement, 2 to 3 years. I actually tonight this afternoon have a meeting with our company, our corporate financial planner, kind of see where I'm at. I think we need to do that. Nurse managers, you need to be out there planning. If it's 10 years from now, if it's 20 years from now, what does that look like? Go to financial planners every few years and make sure you're keeping your plans up to date. I will retire, but I think I will volunteer. I've been doing some speaking at some of our nursing schools. I've loved it. They need training. They need people to come in and even just Q&A with the nursing students and listen to what their questions are. I have enjoyed that. I really like the up and coming generation, so I may do some of that. And then I hope to do some travel with my husband.
Yes.
Thanks, ladies. I still say I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I love being a nurse. I love being a nursing leader. I have some thoughts about what the next steps may be. I love the day-to-day connecting with the team. But I also, I love the operationalizing. I love the big strategic planning. That is something that is starting to kind of, pique my interest. But the biggest thing is I still know that the world and the nursing world is wide open, and I am in control of my own destiny. I have some excellent examples in the leaders that I am surrounded by today with what I can do and where I can go and how I can grow. And, I will admit, as a baby nurse, I'm like, I never want to be in leadership.
Yes.
But honestly, it was that one leader that it was just a bad experience. And if I can impart any of that on my successor, or on another, leader or another nurse, it's like, what is my trajectory? If I can find that joy in sharing my story with others, much like I've been so fortunate to have so many stories shared with me, from complete strangers or from lifelong friends and, lifelong colleagues. But just seeing what's out there. And that's the great thing about nursing is there are so many opportunities and I can go anywhere I want to go. And, having opportunities like this to meet amazing leaders is pointing me in those directions.
That is great. Thank you so much. And this concludes our panel. We're almost out of time, but thank you so much to you guys. This was a lot of fun. Thank you so much to our audience for attending. I want to welcome Cindy Kilgore. She's just going to say a few final remarks. You're muted. Thanks, Cindy.
There we go.
There you go.
Yes. Thank you, Tarsila. And thank you, all of the OR Manager Award winners. It's been so delightful to listen to your answers for all these questions. Thank you. Thank you for being here today and sharing your story about your challenges and successes in your careers. I thoroughly enjoyed hearing from you, and I'd like to wish you and all our attendees here today a happy Perioperative Nurses Week. Woo-hoo.
Yeah.
Yeah, and an upcoming happy Thanksgiving. Before we go, stay tuned to hear from Mike Conti to close out a great week of sessions and networking. Prize giveaways are coming up next at the top of.
There we go.